Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Commander's Forge. My name is Andy Bentley, and the Forge is an area for me to talk about Commander, Magic, and anything else. As like I did last week, where I talked very exclusively about Baldur's Gate 3, because that game is amazing, but I was able to pull myself away this week to continue what I did the week before. I'm going to compare my Sliver deck to the Sliver Swarm precon. And yeah, let's just get right into that. Now, one of the biggest things that stood out to me immediately when I looked at the list is the lands. The lands are very, very different. As a matter of fact, there are only 6 lands that are concurrent in both decks. That is a command tower, and then at least one of each basic, but both decks have varying amounts, though they are both fairly low in basic land count. Mine has a total of 9, where the Sliver Swarm has a total of 11. Now, the big difference is where the Sliver Swarm deck is playing like the tri-lands like Mystic Monastery and Nomad Outpost. I'm playing the nearly perfect 5-color mana base. So what that entails is we have the full 10 shock lands, as opposed to having all of the like tri-lands that come into play tapped. With the shock lands, you can pay 2 life to have them come in to play untapped, and instead of producing 3 colors, they produce 2 colors. But the big thing about them is they are fetchable. Now, I used to have the full 10 fetch lands in here. Now it's down to 7. I do believe I'm missing the Polluted Mire, the Misty Rainforest, and the Verdant Catacombs. They're just in other decks at this point. But one of the things that really did surprise me was they didn't include any of the Battle Bond lands in this deck, which is highly suspect. I'm not actually running all of them myself, but I believe I have 7 of the 10 in here. The 3 not present in my list are Luxury Suite, Vaulted Champions, and Spectator Seating. Again, I know I have them somewhere, they're just being used in other decks right now. Alright, but now let's get into the actual stats. Both decks are running 37 lands, but we've already talked about the differences, so we're going to move into creatures. The precon has 44 total creatures, with 3 of which being non-slivers. They either care about slivers or have changeling or can, choose slivers as a type as it enters. My deck has 53 total creatures, and they are 100% slivers. There is no variation. Now, between the two decks, there are 29 matching creatures, and one notable thing is any of the 2014 slivers that got included in the new precon did get updated art to make them more like the original art for slivers instead of more man-looking like. But I want to talk about the notable differences from the precon, and yes, I realize the first one on this list is on the reserve list, but Sliver Queen, like if there was ever a time to break your reserve list promise, this was probably it. But next to that, we also have Sliver Legion, the first Sliver, and Sliver Overlord. These are all of the other 5-color Sliver commanders. It just... I'm more surprised that the Sliver Legion dodged the reprint, because especially with this being a precon, that one encourages you to attack because it makes all of your slivers huge. But I digress. There are a few other slivers in the list that I have that I found odd weren't included. These include Fury Sliver, which gives all slivers double strike. Reflex and Heart Sliver, which gives all slivers haste. Lancer and Talon Sliver, which gives them all first strike. Horned Sliver, which gives them all trample, and then Pulmonic Sliver, which gives flying, and then protection in that if they would go to the graveyard, you put them back on top of your library. It's actually really good with the first Sliver because you can just kind of churn through, everything. But that's a big difference in the creatures that are in the deck versus the creatures that are not included in the deck. But moving on, we both have one instant. The precon has For the Ancestors, which is 2 and a green for an instant. Choose a creature type, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal any number of cards of the chosen type from among them and put the revealed cards into your hand. The rest go on the bottom of your library in random order, and it has flashback for 3 and a green. On my side, we have Cyclonic Rift, which is Cyclonic Rift. Everybody knows what Cyclonic Rift does. Next up, we have sorceries. They have 10, and it breaks down into 3 board wipes, 4 ramp spells, 2 draw spells, and 1 removal spell. And I have 1 sorcery, and that's Expropriate, because I'm a monster. Now, to finish up this last little bit of the comparison, we move into enchantments. The precon has 1. Mine has 4. The precon has Descendant's Fury, which is like a weird polymorph. So whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you can sacrifice one of them. If you do, you reveal cards from the top of your library. Until you reveal a creature card that shared a creature type with the sacrificed creature, put that creature onto the battlefield, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. The only thing I don't like about this is you can only sacrifice one of the creatures, so probably won't ever make it into this deck. Now, a dragon deck where you're not gonna have that many creatures in play, or you're gonna have like dragon tokens to sacrifice, maybe. But on my side, I have Mana Echoes, Mirari's Wake, Sylvan Library, and Wilderness Reclamation. So the Mirari's Wake and the Wilderness Reclamation are both in there because my commander is Sliver Overlord. So it's a very mana-hungry deck because the deck wants to toolbox, and to toolbox I need the mana to get the creatures that do the thing that I need done out of the deck. Now, Mana Echoes is specifically in there because it's a infinite combo with Sliver Queen. So, Sliver Queen lets you pay 2 to put a 1/1 Sliver into play. Mana Echo says whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you make X mana, where X is the number of that type of creature you control. So if you have Sliver Queen and you make a Sliver, that makes the mana you need to make the next Sliver, which then, if you have Sliver Overlord and Sliver Queen out and you play Mana Echoes, you get to put every Sliver from your deck into your hand. And the chances of you losing that game are fairly low. Now, to round out the breakdown by type, the last one is artifacts. The precon has 7. My deck has 4. The only overlap between the two is Soul Ring. Notable things that they have that I don't is they have an Arcane Signet, Felwar Stone, Pillars of Origin. They lots of mana rocks, whereas my deck focuses primarily on making mana other ways. But yeah, that's kind of like the biggest differences and things between the two decks. I do want to go through and talk about some of the decks, or some of the cards that are included in the precon that I'm probably going to pick up as singles. And I'll do that right after a quick break. I'll be right back. Hey, I just want to take a minute to tell you about my Patreon. I know times are hard for everybody, and I know it isn't easy to shuffle around bills and stuff. Believe me, I know that. But if you would like to help support the podcast and me, You can find the links to my Patreon in my link tree, which is always put into the description of either the video or the audio, wherever you're listening to it. It would really mean the world to me. Honestly, I'm just struggling to make ends meet most weeks. But that's it. That's all. If you want to help, the links will be where you can find them. And we're back. Now, finally, I want to talk about some of the cards that are in both decks, but I plan on picking up because they got updated art. And this centers around the 2014 and 2015 Slivers. So, of them, Blur Sliver is the one that looks the closest to the originals, but it's still like a 4-limbed creature instead of being like the 2 limbs and then like the snake tail. So that one's on the list, along with Venom Sliver, Gale Rider Sliver, Manoweth Sliver, Megantic Sliver, Sentinel Sliver, Striking Sliver, Siphon Sliver, Bone Scythe Sliver, and Diffusion Sliver. Yeah. And then as far as new cards are concerned, I do plan on picking up a Sliver Gravemother, which is the face of the precon. It's Wooburg for a 6/6 Sliver. The legend rule doesn't apply to Slivers you control. Each Sliver creature card in your graveyard has Encore X, where X is its mana value, and it itself has Encore for 5. So, yeah. After that, I want the Hatchery Sliver, which is 1 and a green for a 2/2 Sliver with Replicate for 1 and a green. And each Sliver spell you cast has Replicate. The Replicate cost is equal to its mana cost. This goes really well with the things that like give you a boost in power or power and toughness. Next up is the Regal Sliver, which is 3 and a white for a 3/3 Sliver. Sliver creatures you control have, when this creature enters the battlefield, Slivers you control get +1/+1 till end of turn if you're the Monarch. Otherwise, you become the Monarch. Now, I don't know if I've mentioned this in the past, but I am a fan of the Monarch mechanic. And honestly, would like to push to see it be more included in Commander as maybe part of the base game. Don't know. We'll see. And last up on the things that are in this deck that I do not own, I want the Spiteful Sliver, which is 2 and a red for a 2/2 Sliver. Sliver creatures you control have, whenever this creature is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target player or planeswalker. The dream is to have this out and have people not realize it, and then have them try and wipe the board with just something that deals damage, and you get to throw all the damage back at their face. It's going to be great. Yeah, that's kind of it for this week. I do want to give another shout out to Baldur's Gate 3. That game is going to have so much playability. I'm almost all the way through my first playthrough, and I'm already thinking about what I want to do for my second playthrough. It's an insanely good game. But with that said, I will see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening. All of my links can be found in my link tree in the description below. I would like to thank Ian Foss and Cody Mulpey of the band The Crypt for allowing me to use music for my opening and ending, along with Nate and Erica Jacobs for making my original logo. And I would also like to thank Christina McNichol for creating my new logo. And I'll see you next time.